Hi guys, week three. This is the first time we'll talk about a specific area within the athletic department, and we're going to start with compliance. Um, I'm going to give you this is the definition straight out of the NCAA rule book, and you understand that the NCAA rule book is about 450 pages, and it's pretty extensive and it's hard to learn, and so. Just a couple things to talk to you about that. The institution has it's their job to comply with whatever the rules are. It's the association, meaning the NCAA's job to help them comply. And when they don't comply, it's their deal to correct them. And I'll kind of explain that as we go along. The center of all this is the compliance director. And you understand there's a whole compliance department. I have a friend who I went to graduate school with. He's the compliance director at Ole Miss, which means he's been busy. But they're the most valuable and resented part of the athletic department. They're valuable because they keep people out of trouble. They're resented because they have to get people into trouble. And so their tasks vary completely day to day. I mean, it could be looking at new legislation. It could be helping coaches get ready for their rules exam. It could be monitoring practice schedules to make sure people aren't violating those rules. Look at recruiting logs, visits. I mean, there's tons of things that go into this job. Two of the biggest ones probably are one is rules education. You understand these rules are daunting, okay, and not only do the coaches have to know them, but the student athletes, the administrators, boosters all have to understand these. And the head coach is ultimately the one that's responsible for their team. But what happens is most places ask the coaches not to know all the rules, but to know enough about the rules to ask what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. The second big part that goes into all this is recruiting. It's if you ask most coaches, they'll tell you they hate this part more than anything. It's vital because it's what helps you win, but it's also the part that gets you in trouble. Coaches have to pass a recruiting exam. It's 30 questions each year. They got to score 80 or higher, and they have recruiting calendars that they have to follow. And so I put a link to, hopefully it'll pull up to some recruiting definitions so you can kind of see what these things look like. And these are just examples that talk about what a student athlete is, what evaluates the contact period, quiet period, dead period, official visit, and I'll link this on Eagle Web so you guys can kind of look and see what that's like. But recruiting is a lifeblood of an organization. It's also an extreme pain in the rear end. Now, understand every organization gets violations every year. Most of them are innocent, meaning they call themselves on it and they punish themselves. If it's a major infraction, it gets investigated by the NCAA and they gather information, they build a case, they bring everybody in that's involved, everybody gets a copy, they get to dispute it, and then they announce a decision and they assess a penalty. Now, what's pretty cool is there is and I'll link this on the Eagle Web too, there's a legislative services website. So basically you can go in and look for anything you want to look at. Okay, so you can go look at major infractions and it's going to, you pull it up. So I don't like the University of Alabama, so let's look and see what they did. This was from this year. Former assistant acted unethically when providing false or misleading information about impermissible recruiting contacts. And it talks about what they did and everything that goes on it. So that's something cool that you all can look at and kind of learn from. What ends up happening is when an institution gets in trouble, especially if it's bad, they need to go outside and get legal help. They don't need to do it from inside. They need to hire lawyers that specialize in that to help them. Because understand, it's hard for the institution to do it when the institution's also having to do the day-to-day activities. And what I just showed you is that legislative services database, and this is where they collect information on infractions, and you can search and see what everybody's done and what happened to them. Now, the second part of this lecture we're going to talk about is Title IX. And this is one of the biggest parts of compliance that they have to deal with, not only compliance directors, but also athletic directors. So it's a 1972 law that prohibits sex discrimination in any educational program that receives federal funding. And so there's three main areas of it that you can comply with. It's participation, scholarships, and other benefits. So we're going to go through those. Participation is the one that everybody uses. This is the most common thing you hear about, and it's this three-prong approach. And what this does is it allows an institution to be in compliance by just complying with one of these three prongs. Prong one basically is that you got to provide athletic participation opportunities that are proportionate to your enrollment. So what that means is that if you have 60% of your undergrad population is women, then 60% of your athletic participation spots should be for women. If it was 70, it would be 70. So that's pretty straightforward, and that's the one most people do. Prong two is showing that you have a history of expanding opportunities for the underrepresented sex. And what that means is basically that you have detailed records showing where you add programs, where you expand programs, and you show that you're doing your due diligence and basically providing opportunities for usually women. And then prong three is that you have a full and effective accommodation of the interest and ability of the underrepresented sex. And this is harder to explain, harder for people to use, and most people don't use this one because it's kind of fuzzy. But basically, you're just trying to show that that you're aware and that you have some legitimate method of making sure that you show interest of women, meaning do you put forth a good faith effort showing that that you don't eliminate women's sports, that you offer sports that have competition in the same areas, in the same geographic areas. This one's very confusing, and less people really use this one. Prong one is the one that you see, and prong one's also the one that you see people use in order to be able to cut men's sports. Okay, and understand Title IX is never designed to cut men's sports. It's just lazy athletic directors who, rather than adding women's sports, it's easier to cut men's sports. So you don't blame the law. Part of it falls on the institution not doing a good job with promoting their sports. Now, the second part of compliance is scholarships. It's based on the number of student athletes in the athletic department. So if you have a multi-sport athlete, they only count once. And there can't be more than a 1% difference, or you have to provide a rationale. So basically what it means is if 60% of your institution is males, then males should receive 59 to 60% of the scholarship dollars awarded. And you cannot vary from this very much. So you can obviously see where this is one people will not want to do because of, if you have football, this causes an issue. And this is just a look at, and I'll link this on EagleWeb also, of the scholarships by sports. Okay, so you can kind of look at the difference. Let's look at NAI for football. You have 85 in scholarships in football for Division I, 24 in NAI. Let's look at volleyball, 4.5 in NAI, or in NCAA. Really, you're not required to have any in NAI. Okay, and so this kind of gives you an idea to let you can kind of look through this, and I'll link it to EagleWeb. And then the last way to comply is other benefits. And here's the thing: men's and women's programs, they don't have to look the same, but they have to be equitable. And there's a list of things, and a lot of people call this a checklist or a hodgepodge list of things. You have to have the same kind of quality equipment and maintain it. You have to schedule games and practice equitably. When you have travel per diems, you have to have the same amount for men and women. They have to have the same opportunities for academic tutoring and coaching. The locker rooms, practice And competitive facilities should be equitable. They should have the same benefits for medical training and housing and dining. They should get the same amount of publicity, the same amount of recruiting ability, and the same amount of support services. So it's basically just saying that everything else that goes around the sport, you do the same for women as you do men. And the last thing I want to talk about is getting into compliance. It's interesting because, like I said, I have a buddy who's the compliance director at Ole Miss, and his is an interesting deal. We were GAs at Tennessee together, but he wasn't a GA in compliance. He was a GA in academics, and he volunteered his time in the compliance department. And through he did a good job, they helped him get on as an assistant at Baylor, and then he moved to an assistant at Oklahoma, and then finally to Ole Miss. And so the key to getting into compliance is to get to a big college campus and volunteer your time, either as an intern or a volunteer. And this will just kind of give you an idea of just what this is, a compliance job posting, what they want you to have. Okay. Again, you can click on this for yourself and look, but it's giving you a list of everything that they ask you to do during this, and it's pretty substantial. Okay. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. You're going to have an interesting assignment that I'm going to ask you to do this week. Make sure you stay on top of what it is that you're doing, and I appreciate those of you who are doing a good job and working hard.